Welcome, Andrew, on Beyond the Title podcast. Thanks for making time. I'll just give you a brief idea about what the podcast is about, if that's fine. Uh, so, you know
I
how
listened to the other episodes. I got you.
nice, nice. Glad you found time to listen to them. So, you know how people have different job titles, but when we were beginner in our career, we really knew like what each job title meant. What does day to day of people in different job titles look like? So this podcast is there to give better idea to early stage individuals as to what lifestyle like of these individuals in different job title. And you having worked at Google as a product design lead for several years, would love to know and learn more from you. Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, product design lead feels generous. Product designer, UX engineer. I had a bunch of titles. I'm glad you're doing this because I didn't know the career path that I'm taking was even an option when I was going into college or even after college. My title for most of the time I was at Google was UX engineer. My title at the last company I was at was software engineer. I think it actually might have been even member of technical staff. They really were not, they're not title people. And now I'm doing product design work, but it's closer to like industrial design. Um, but when I was in school, like all the way through, I was really lucky and had amazing arts education. And I didn't get into the art school I wanted to get into, and I wanted to wrestle in college anyway. And I ended up I went in undecided, chose econ, decided that wasn't for me. Wanted to just get BSBA, business administration thing. Um, and then my junior year of college, I took a set of courses at Boston U called CORE, and it's marketing, finance, operations, and information systems.
Nice.
For the information systems part, basically the way the course is structured, you get a team of people who get assigned to be in a group together, and you have to come up with, or had to, I don't know how it is now, but had to come up with an analog like a physical thing. It couldn't be software and it couldn't be a service. Um, Figure out, go on Alibaba and do all that stuff and figure out how to get it manufactured. And um, for the information systems portion, we had to build a website and we weren't allowed to outsource it. We had to have someone on the team either figure it out or use a tool to get it done. Um, but when I did that, it was my first exposure to writing code beyond, equations and spreadsheets, right? Um, and it felt amazing. The problems, I liked learning how to do it. I was comfortable banging my head against stuff I didn't understand until I could get things to run. Graduated with my business degree, but my senior year, I thought, I'm gonna have to work a 9 to 5 at some point. So if I wasn't in class or training or doing homework, I was in athlete study hall because I could get a little private room and learning to make websites. And I got an internship at Life is Good in their marketing department. And this was what, 2011, I want to say. Yeah, 2011. And so like social media was just getting really hot. Um, and I was like, oh, I can quantify my impact for the first time in like a really easy way. I used some of my self-taught web development skills to get their brand Life is Good's branded radio station onto their Facebook page, um, and setting up automation of posting and those types of things.
Wow,
Um,
quite a journey.
huh? Oh
Quite.
yeah, I mean that's like yeah, definitely didn't I didn't have like a vision for my career. I sort of have gotten really lucky and worked hard and things have worked out. See. Oh, I also sold Cutco knives.
Oh, nice.
Uh, I am, is that a thing where you are? That's not, they're not international, I don't think, are they?
Yeah, but I've seen them in
Um,
US when I was stayed there.
yeah. Um, for your audience, if they don't know what Cutco knives is, it's literally you're selling kitchen knives. You can go door to door, but I never did that. It takes too much energy. So I, made phone calls, got referrals, did selling. Sold like $20,000 worth of knives in the summer when I was like 18. Um, and around that same time, I actually had my first design job, but I didn't know that that's what it was. Um, a My friend's older brother, this is even further back. This is 2008 or 9. My buddy's older brother went to the London School of Economics and then started a like suit supply custom fit type thing where they had a website and you would, enter your measurements and then get your custom suit. And he needed the interface for where you put all how you put all your measurements in and do all that stuff. And my friend was like said to his older brother, I got this buddy. He's really good at drawing. He likes doing this type of stuff. You should have him do it. And he traded me a suit, a custom suit for my first design job.
Nice,
Um,
nice. So you mentioned a few
and
things. You learned coding on your own. You did some salesmanship. You got a business degree. You design a website for your friends. You did quite a bunch of things early on in your career. So how did you land at Google? Of course, you demonstrated a very high agency, but curious to know how you found the role at Google.
Sure. So, after my Life is Good internship, my junior year of college, I kept some web development clients. Um, I reached out to some Call of Duty YouTubers and was like, hey, if your
Wow,
branding's cooler, you'll sell more merch, whatever. And ended up, somebody flew me out and I did some work for them and it was really fun. Um, but then after that Life is Good internship, I took some of those clients with me. It was continuing to consult while I was in school and doing web work for them as well, like social media consulting and web work for them. And then after I graduated in 2012, was like peak social media boom. And I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I should go to San Francisco, go to the Bay Area. Um, and this is the part that I just got really lucky, which is my sister went to Stanford, and a friend of hers was working for a business unit that had recently gotten acquired by Google called Wildfire. It was like a social media management platform. Um, and the fit was right. So I was so it was a B2B tool. Um, and then there was a service component where they had custom applications and custom YouTube channels and things like that. Um, and my experience was just a good fit for the role. And because I had a referral from somebody, my sister's friend, um, my resume got an actual pair of eyes on it. And the hiring manager and the team saw my resume and thought, oh, this guy might be a good fit. I came in for a series of interviews and had a good day. And
nice.
then it was almost 10 years at Google.
Whole decade at Google. So how?
Almost. Um, and I had time off in there that was, sort of extended because I needed to reset.
That's remarkable.
Um,
That's remarkable. How did those initial day at Google look like? How was your day-to-day like? Who all did you interact with? Curious to know more.
so I was supporting a team of sales engineers who were in turn supporting a sales team. And it was taking Essentially, my function was um, we want to go into a pitch with here's what you brand could have if you were to buy our platform.
Interesting.
So I took my first and only actual uh, computer science class. I took Python at Google with Alan Huang, amazing guy. He taught a ton of Googlers Python. Um, and shout out to Luis Manrique, uh, the sales engineer who helped put me onto some of this stuff. Um, and given that we were doing demos to customers, it's pre-sale. So it's not like we had their branding and all this stuff. So using what I learned in this Python at Google class, I wrote some scripts to do a bunch of asset generation and a bunch of scraping to pull down assets and colors and all sorts of things from all of the brand's social channels and from their website and all this stuff. And I was building, I remember the rate was like more than a demo a day of building these out. And my manager at the time, before I did this automation process, um, I was just trying to each time support a deal, it was like, what parts, how can I do this so that it doesn't take a bunch of extra time, but there are parts of this that I can reuse for the next one?
Interesting.
And building up kind of this library of my own kind of components. That's not really like, they're not in any formal way components, but um, building up this library of things. Uh, but once I saw the deal volume that we were supposed to support in an upcoming quarter, I reached out to my manager and just said, "Hey, I saw our targets, and I need like a week of not supporting deals so that I can automate this process. I have a plan." She said, "I'm not super technical, but give me a document so I can provide air cover for you. So if anyone goes, hey, how come Swank's not supporting deals this week? I can say, look, it's we're investing in the future here." So
Is it fair understanding that you essentially prioritize their process so as to support more deals?
yeah, I
That
think so. I mean, I don't know about if the process is a product. I don't know how good it was, but I did share it with some other people, and they used pieces parts that worked for them.
nice. I must say, your ability to learn things, like large number of things in small amount of time, is quite remarkable. From early in your career, self-teaching yourself coding, to getting a job at Google and learning there a new language, a new coding language, and building things, quite remarkable. What happens then? Like, what after this initial role, what other projects you took, or what did it lead to?
So a little over a year into that role, um, I got a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, this is gonna be get shut down because that's a big Google thing, right? They buy something for the people, and then of the people or the technology, and they either roll the technology in and get new people, or they keep the people and get new technology. And this was keeping the people. But that meant, really massive reorg. I think there was something like 500 salespeople, and our sales engineering team was 20 something. I got a little bit of a heads up before they started moving people. Like, hey, the sales engineering team is going to be going to DoubleClick sales, and I know that's not what you want to be doing. Um, so this same manager gave me sort of air cover uh, to support what they were doing with the DoubleClick work while I found something else. I was just reaching out to designers like crazy. And I found some people on Google Flights who needed prototypes. And at this point, I was like still not super capable writing JavaScript. Um, but they needed prototypes. And so I figured uh, there was no open role, but it was like, if I demonstrate my value to these people, maybe I can find the right person and they can get head count and hopefully it'll work out. So I produced a few things for them before I was on their team. And then when they got head count, then I moved over into Google Flights and Hotels, travel UX.
Nice.
Um, and that was my first actual time being on a design team. Um,
Nice. Google Flights is used worldwide, must be having millions of users. Curious to know how the design process over there look like. How did you go about designing new things? Like how many iterations you usually do? Who all were people you interacted with? Just curious to know more about design ideation.
yeah. So I'm gonna roll back a second and talk about like the job function.
Sure.
So in that first role, I had in one review cycle, I had one job code, but I had different titles. I had like web developer, prototyper. There was one other, and then they finally landed on UX engineering as like
Wow.
the brand for the function. But basically, it's just prototyping, right? The technology. It's being a very technical designer is really kind of how I see it. In terms of the design process, uh, even though I was super junior in my career, the designers I was working with gave me uh, a lot of room to work. So I work best if someone goes, here's what needs to be right so we can move these numbers. All right, perfect. The we were getting a lot of the big project I worked on when I was on that team was the date picker. And uh, that was a place in the sales funnel that we were losing customers. And so we have engineering resources because we know that this is a product problem, a business problem that needs solving. And uh, this is before material design or anything. The designer I was working with, very good interaction designer, Ralph Metzger. Um, he gave me really helpful visual design and some interaction guidelines. But then I actually conducted an audit of all of the competitors, not all of them, but enough meaningful competitors to get a sense of what date picking interaction patterns people are using. Um, and then we I made we made some guesses as to what we thought was a good pattern. Um, and then we set up user testing. Actually, before I even prototyped, I think the researcher did tests with the competitors I found to understand more, to get to the point where it was like not a complete shot in the dark. So, um, a lot of times, especially in this case, it was the researcher put together, here's the user task, right? This is the part of the checkout flow that we're in. Here's the thing they need to do. This is what success looks like for moving through the
Nice.
sale process.
So, is it a fair understanding that you spend majority of your time with user researcher in this ideation state?
Split between the designer and the researcher. The designer, um, I was meeting with the designer probably more frequently, but the researcher was really helping define the scope. Um, and the designer was managing the relationship with the product manager, and also with the engineering team. Um, and as we were doing all this stuff, the front end folks were uh, participating in the design process so that we as a design team didn't then propose something that was unbuildable or unbuildable with the resources we had to build it with.
Got it.
Um, so I would say I spent the most time with, in the beginning part, the most time with the designer, then the researcher, then the software engineering team. And then as we iterated more, it was probably researcher, designer, software engineering team. And then once we iterated to the point where we felt confident in the designs, it was I was mostly interfacing with the engineering team because there was some pretty intensive animation that needed, performance management and intimate front end knowledge without the constraints of a production system. So trying to find methods of doing this stuff without working on the same stack, and then working with those engineers to port it to what would work in production and at scale.
Great. Thanks for those insights as to how your day-to-day look like. I'm going to summarize our interaction so far for our viewers. So early on in your career, you showed very high agency. You went out, did projects on your own. So build your resume not just in terms of words, but actual products and prototypes that you could show while picking a job. Then when you got a job at Google, you learn a new skill on the job. Again, showed a very high agency. So for folks who are early on in their career, showing high agency, going out of their way to build things is, I guess, very important. Then when your business unit, changed into some other dimension by Google's decision, you found your way into a new team and you're now part of like this large Google Flights team, catering millions of users. And there is a large team and you're working, I guess, collaboratively with all these cross-functional stakeholders to build what's best for users. So, Andrew, you have worked at Google for close to a decade. In your experience, what separated great designers from good ones?
That's it's an interesting question. I think all good designers share a few things, right? Like curiosity and uh, not just wanting to understand users, but understanding the systems they're operating and in the like with respect to the product and what the technical capabilities are and those types of things. Um, I think a big thing that allows junior designers to level up is not being too attached to the work. So being open to critique is one big thing. Um, where sure the work is a reflection of you, but it's like it's a reflection of your capability in this time and space with all the constraints that you get. Um, so being able to use critique effectively, being able to run a critique effectively, which basically I think boils down to an ability to scope the feedback how you want. Um, Like there's a tool called Balsamic, or at least there was. I haven't touched it or looked at it in years, but all of it was a wireframing tool. And in order to not have any of the conversation about visual design, they're like using Comic Sans and the lines are sort of like sketchy and wavy because these are things that are not on the table when you're reviewing designs that are built with that tool. I mean, this is like personal bias, but working in the medium. So I've in other design disciplines other than software, there's an expectation that the designer can work in the medium. So um, like industrial designers can model and machine things. Fashion designers can sew. But I don't think we have really the same expectation uh, of software designers. And I think when Google originally started hiring designers as a discipline, they needed to be able to code. And I think that unnecessarily excludes some people, but you should be able to like build a layout or like it's just it enhances a designer's ability to communicate. So the closer it is to the real thing, the less room there is for error when the design is sort of being like translated into the real thing.
Interesting. So having basic knowledge of coding enhances designers' ability to communicate what they are conceiving. Is that a fair understanding?
Sort of. If the closer a designer can get to the real thing, it can be a no code tool and that's fine. But with things like Lovable and all of these AI things, the AI doesn't write good code, in my opinion, but at least you can, at least on the front end, you can get much closer to the real thing. So, accepting constraints, technical constraints, and being able to work within them or be able to move them if you're technical enough. Um,
Interesting.
that's yeah.
And talking about AI, you recently wrote an interesting piece on Medium, which my understanding of it is that you're saying AI is great tool, but when it comes to creative thinking, and since creative thinking requires both convergent and divergent thinking, AI is quite restricted over there compared to humans. Would love for you to elaborate on it because that's a very interesting opinion.
Um, well, it depends on the problem space, in my opinion. Like if a large language model or any game playing thing, uh, any ML system, um, the output can be creative if the problem space it's operating in is pretty constrained. So there's a case of like AlphaGo. I don't know if you know this thing. It's uh, Go has orders of magnitude more possible combinations than chess. It was seen as like the ultimate machine learning problem, the ultimate game for a computer to be able to beat a human being at. And some of the moves that Google's AlphaGo played were deemed creative. But when using large language models, it's predictive and it's going to give you the most likely outcome given your prompt. Like the machine isn't really capable of diverging, partly because it's constrained by the data that it's been trained on, but also like fundamentally it's supposed to give you the most statistically likely thing. For the same reason, building a random number generator is hard. Uh, computers are supposed to give you a repeatable, reliable outcome. And I think the same sort of problem shows up when using large language models.
Interesting. Interesting. In today, when you design and such, do you use any LLMs? How do you utilize AI in designing, or you not utilize it at all?
I use it. Cursor is the IDE that I use. If there's something I really don't know how to do, then sure, it can get me closer. But if it's something I already know how to do, typically when I've tried to get, when I've had an outcome in mind and tried to get the LLM to take several steps to get to that outcome, I've been dissatisfied with the results. I think the things that it's really good at if you're writing code are things like documentation, testing, um, getting feedback on your work before you use someone else's time to get that same feedback. So like if it's integrated into a code review process, I don't think people should be merging code in without human reviewers. Um, but getting a machine to review the code beforehand, uh, I think has a lot of value. Um, Getting feedback on things like pull request formatting and making sure that everything that's actually changed is reflected in plain language in the pull request, I think can be really helpful. Um, but I think it's most helpful for stuff that's drudgery, right? Like engineers want velocity, engineers want to write good code, and documentation is something you have to have, but it takes time away from doing the creative pieces of the job.
Interesting. You mentioned is good at documentation, which I agree. And documentation brings me back to a topic of product management. And you
Sure.
worked at Google Flies. I am sure you must have worked with so many product managers. Uh, just like a question for designers, in your opinion, what separated great product managers there from good ones?
Um, I'm like, how do I put this? I don't want to say the first thing that comes to mind is like staying in their lane. A great product manager is not going to solve the problem for their team. A great product manager is going to provide the constraints for the team to work in, provide goals that are good, um, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely, smart goals is
Yeah.
uh, a good framework. Coordinating, the ability to coordinate, and the ability to shield is like sort of wrong, but like it's the ability to manage the business stuff so that the people who are making things have the most time they can have to do those things uninterrupted. Um, I think like time management is huge because with business objectives, it's like there's a specific date, specific time. With design and engineering, it's like I never have more than three things that I'm going to do in a given day because I
Right.
can't, at least work wise, because I can't get more granular than that and actually be in the space to problem solve in a nimble way. Uh, if my time is split into like half hour increments, like PMs so often have to do. Um, So protecting their team's time too is huge. Um,
Nice.
yeah,
Thanks for that perspective, Andrew. So we were at a point in your career where you had just worked on Will flights. Then what? Like what happened then? What other interesting projects you took?
I had my first design sprint. Um, there was like a big meeting of designers across Google. Um, it's worth noting over the period that I worked there, Google went from 25,000 people to over 250,000 people.
Wow.
Um, so huge culture changes, all these other things. But at this first big design sprint, I met someone who I really wanted to work with and for, somebody named D Speed, who uh, was on Google Fiber. And uh, I loved the idea of getting internet access to people who were previously unserved or underserved. Um, and really I wanted to work with her first and foremost. The projects change, people change, but uh, choose based on the people, I think. Uh, in any case, I worked on fiber for a little while. It was pretty fun and exciting. I got a lot more technical. Uh, I was using a thing called Backbone JS, which is like a precursor to React and all these other newer things. And eventually Google shuttered that too, a little after a year in. And while I was there, and these folks aided me in getting more technical and gave me some of their tools that they were using, uh, I was able to connect with some folks on Google Search. And by this time, they were the only team of UX engineers at Google. And once Google announced that they were, I don't know, not maybe shutting down is wrong, but like stopping the expansion of fiber, um, I headed over to search, and that was right when the Google Assistant was brand new, uh, and that was the next thing for me.
Interesting. So you move from flights, which is totally digital in terms of user interacting with it, to Google Assistant. How was the transition like, and what was something that was new, surprising, if at all, for you in this new project?
So flights to fiber felt pretty straightforward because like ultimately it was both like e-commerce type things. Um, Moving on to the assistant was bizarre. uh, just partly because the interaction models were pretty new, like it's multimodal, so voice and touch and
Yeah.
visuals. Um, and there were no tools for prototyping. Um, and that was probably the biggest difference is it was bleeding edge stuff and uh the the rate at which they were expanding that, like they hired 2,000 engineers in a year.
Wow.
um yeah, crazy. And the design team grew from like 200 to 500 or something. um the Yeah, I mean, I had to learn a whole new set of things where it was voice. How do you do a voice driven thing? And there was a tool called API.ai, which is now Dialogflow, that had some really good entity extraction stuff. So uh, spent a bunch of time doing like food ordering and other things with that. But the biggest adjustment was like honestly research setup. Like the technical changes, sure, sure. But when we were conducting research, um, this very talented UX engineer named Koshal Shah put together this Wizard of Oz tool where uh, Google has pretty serious labs to conduct user research, and we were working on the Google Home with the screen, and uh, basically had a setup where prototypes on this device, the researchers in the room with the device and the participant. I'm in the next room and I'm connected to the device, and I have just a button panel. Like, I don't know if you've seen prank call soundboards, but it was basically a soundboard that also controlled the visual UI. And so I would watch the participants do things and then make the screen change and do things without having to hook into some complicated backend because we were just trying to figure out what the front end was like. Um, and I remember one particularly striking research study. We were testing, oh, I don't even remember the difference between two layouts. And I miss the participant said something and I misclicked and the state of the screen changed to something else. And the participant went, oh, it's a smart screen. It must have understood. And meanwhile, I'm behind the curtain making this thing go. And it was just, yeah, I don't know, it felt kind of magical because it was the technology was really new and people didn't have a lot of expectations around it. Um, and it was fascinating. But for as a design group, one of the biggest challenges is like there are no tools to prototype this stuff, at least cheaply. Um, and I made a what I was saying, I think earlier in our conversation, I'd said something about like taking pieces project to project.
Yeah.
That was huge here. So the big I partnered with a designer who was doing a lot of voice prototyping, and she needed uh, a way to quickly and cheaply do this. And designers, product managers, everyone was already using Google Slides anyway. So we sort of said, what can we do with Google Slides to make passable prototypes to do this sort of role playing with the computer's voice and all these other things. Um, and so I made a Chrome extension that when you switched slides and you put your text in a greater than and less than, it would read whenever the slide would change to the appropriate one. So you could like fake the screen and go through. And making tools as it's is satisfying in its own way because people always use them in ways that uh, the maker of the tool does not intend or expect. And I built this Chrome extension that people were using to do these prototypes, and some designers using built-in features in slides like buttons and heat maps and things built sort of like almost full UIs where it's like a choose your own adventure, linking to different slides and driving the conversation that way. And that was fascinating. Um, and after that, that snowballed into can we do all of that was the output piece, right? Where like I can hit some endpoint that's doing the voice synthesis and I can play the audio on the client. Great. That's half of well, a third, right? Where it's like it can talk. Uh, I'm not dealing with the thinking piece because I'm not a machine learning person. Uh, but then there's also the listening and hearing piece that we needed to solve for our prototypes. And so I built a system that there was a backend that did synthesis and transcription. So it did the building the audio and going audio to text. Um, so I built this system with a library that was the APIs. It's still to this day the proudest technical design work I've done because it was a lot of technical stuff under the hood that was made easier for designers to use. So uh, Framer has changed a lot, but the original Framer, I ported this set of tools so that designers were making Framer prototypes that were then voice enabled. Um, and it was exciting to see that as well because it was making the technology more accessible for people who are slightly less technical, but people who are still very eager to produce high fidelity prototypes.
Wow. So I guess resourcefulness is the lesson there. You went out of your way to build this Chrome extension to solve a problem. There was no straight path to go about it, but you found your own way and to be resourceful to get the project done, to meet the end goal and objective. That's I guess is a great lesson for our viewers.
Yeah, be scrappy. And if the broader problems are too big or too complicated or you don't know where to start, solve solve your friends and teammates' problems.
Yeah.
Like ask people what they hate about their job and make it go away. Uh,
Right. And then solving those smaller problems lead to solution of bigger problem over a period of time, I guess.
for sure. And I'm really grateful that I had supportive managers as I was doing this work because it's especially in a space that uh, is technical and there's not some expert I can go to. There's not a ton of documentation. Having flexibility and a compassionate manager uh, makes a huge difference.
For sure. Thanks, Andrew, for a very detailed and elaborate overview of your experience. Definitely helpful in getting perspective as to what the life of designer at Google looks like. If there's one message that you could give to someone who's watching this, who might want to be a designer at Google, and early in his career, his or her career, if there's one thing that you'd like to tell that person, what would be that piece of advice?
Hmm. Don't have the place be the end goal. Choose based on the problems and the people rather than the brand of the company. Um, Google is an amazing place. But don't let your job be your identity and choose problems you want to solve, choose the people you want to help, uh, and network. I mean, I said before, like I got very lucky because of my network. And um, as I progressed through my career at Google, I was having to do a lot of internal networking because teams were changing. So yeah, be resilient. People will tell you no, or they might not even respond. And being able to just say, like, all right, I let me ask for a meeting with this person I have no business actually meeting with. And if they take a meeting, amazing. And if they don't, you had no business meeting with them anyway, right? So yeah, ask people for help because the good ones will.
Very well said. Very well said, Andrew. Thanks for taking time to chat with us and sharing all the insights and wisdom that came out of your career. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And for our viewers who might want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Uh, you can find me on LinkedIn as Andrew Swank is the extension. If you connect with me, write a message so I know you're not some random person or a bot. Uh, just say you found me on Shriek's podcast, and I'm happy to chat.
Great. Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.